I'll tell you one thing, I have a feeling this movie's gonna be really polarizing. Stop it. What is up, Netflix fans, and welcome back to my channel. I just watched the brand new Netflix movie called Polar. This film stars Mads Mikkelsen, a guy who I love. Every time he pops up in a television show or a movie, I am in love with the guy. I think he's fantastic. And Vanessa Hudgens, very random, but she's in this film. And as the world's top assassin, Duncan is settling into retirement when his former employer marks him as a liability to the firm. Against his will, he finds himself back in the game. Sounds familiar? Going head to head with an army of younger killers. I know I keep comparing this to John Wick, and you guys are saying, Austin, this is based off of a graphic novel, and that's a great point. This movie is based off a graphic novel. I saw the announcement, I watched the trailer. It had me so excited for what this could be, making Mads Mikkelsen into this character, giving us something that I've wanted for a long time. Seeing him going around, beating people up and shooting people, that's always fun. And I don't want to compare this to John Wick and make it sound like I'm degrading the film, because that's not what I'm trying to do. The movie literally starts off, this is not a spoiler, it starts off with our hero buying a dog. And I'll give it this, it's aware of the fact that it is ripping off certain things from that movie, and about halfway through it turns into a different film, but prior to that point, the first 40-45 minutes, it really felt like it was trying to rip off and copy John Wick, except it had this really stylized aspect to it, where everything was over the top and overly stylistic, and the dialogue, the characters, everybody was insane. I felt like I was watching Crank at times. The color scheme reminded me of Mandy. Everything was so vibrant, and then it would transition not in a smooth way, but in a very fast way to the scenes with Mads and Vanessa Hudgens, and those scenes were void of any kind of color or any kind of that stylistic aspect. It just really calmed down so quickly, and the fact that it kept going back and forth, two different movies is what it felt like, but it kept trying to hit both of those films back to back, and it all just felt really overwhelming from a filmmaking standpoint. It didn't flow well. The two tones did not mesh. There are two very specific tones, and I can't say, oh, well, the movie was all over the place, because it really wasn't all over the place. It was just here at times and then here at times, but it never met in the middle for me. And while visually it's really bright most of the time, tonally it's very dark. The material, everything that it has to go off of, the dialogue occasionally, it gets to this dark emotional place, and at those points I'm like, okay, the movie's really starting to capture me. Everything that happened pretty much with Mads Mikkelsen on screen worked for me. I really enjoyed that. I enjoyed his character. I enjoyed where he came from and where he ended up at the end of the movie, but everything else was just so inconsistent with what we were getting from Mads Mikkelsen and even his relationship with Vanessa Hudgens' character. Everything else was way too over the top. We start at the beginning of the movie, the text comes on screen, I'm like, oh, this reminds me of Suicide Squad in a way. The music comes on, everything's upbeat and crazy. There's a lot of sexual stuff in this movie, but it's not sexual stuff that fits. It's sexual stuff that feels like really unnatural dialogue. The script for this film is very rough at times, and sometimes I was sitting there, I felt awkward, it was a bit cringeworthy, and all of the stuff I'm really complaining about had to do with our villains, our group of villains. Every time they're on screen, I was just like, I want to get back to Mads Mikkelsen, I want to see what his character's up to, and really, they're on screen more than he was on screen. They take up, not the majority, but they take up probably over 50% of the film, and that is why I'm sitting here complaining about a lot of the movie, because I just wanted to see the reason I signed up for this. I didn't sign up for, I guess I signed up for Netflix. The reason I turned on this movie in the first place was to watch him take people out and do what John Wick does. I did not want a semi-copy of John Wick. I wanted the movie to be a bit different. And while we get that, it's very few and far in between. The first action scene that I really cared about featuring Mads Mikkelsen was 45 minutes into the movie. It's not the first action scene, but it's the first one that really engrossed me. It's the first one that didn't have filmmaking that completely annoyed me. I was engrossed by that scene, but it was 45 minutes into the movie, and by that point, I wasn't really interested in the characters as much. And before you guys click away saying, oh, he hates this movie and I loved it and I hate him, I didn't say I'm not going to recommend this film, because I think if people want to see Mads Mikkelsen do what you think he's going to do, while it's very, like I said, few and far in between, it does happen. And when it happens in a good way, it's impressive, it's entertaining, it's the entire reason you watch this movie. It's in there. So if you want to wait for it, if it's a casual watch, that's the beauty about Netflix. I can review these movies a bit differently. If you're doing something in the kitchen and you you want to turn this movie on, I encourage you to do that because it is there. And I don't think the ending was the worst thing ever. I think this film ended on a high note. I enjoyed what happened. There's a little twist in there. Some things are revealed, and you get a very interesting what could happen next to certain characters in this movie. I liked that, but everything prior just frustrated me and got me to the point to where I was kind of irritated with the style and the filmmaking and the way that everything's over the top. The main villain, the guy that dresses up in all the fancy suits, I hated him. Not like I hated him as in the writing was really good for the villain, like I hated his character. He was distracting, he was annoying every time he was on screen, he was very over the top, and maybe that's what they were going for, but for me, for some people it'll work, for me it didn't work, and that's why I just wanted him done. See you later. And I don't want to say that guy's a bad actor, but the acting on his part wasn't very good. The acting for the villains in general, this entire movie, some of the side actors here and there's a store clerk that I didn't think was very good. That whole group of villains, they were meant to be over the top, sure, but once again, it's not something that captivated me, and it's just something that got really annoying after a while. Once again, I love Mads Mikkelsen as an actor. I loved most of his scenes in this movie. I thought he was great, and if we would have gotten a different film, I feel like I would have really enjoyed this. Instead, most things that surrounded his character was a huge misfire for me. The characters, the way that it was so far over the top, the script, the dialogue, and the filmmaking in general, none of that impressed me, and because of all of that, I'm going to give Polar a 42%. I was really anticipating this movie. I thought it would be much better than this. The fact that I don't think it's that good does not mean you guys should not watch it. If you love Mads Mikkelsen, I encourage you. And I do think, in a way, this will be a divisive movie. I think there's going to be offense. Some people are going to be on my side of it, and some people will be on the other side, and that's not a bad thing. That's the beauty of movies. We can agree, we can disagree. Maybe you guys agree with some of my points, but you're like, Austin, I love the fact that it was super stylistic and the colors and the text, and that's fine. I love the fact that we can talk about that, so get down in the comment section below. How did you feel about Polar? Are you the polar opposite of me? Stop. Thank you guys so much for joining me. Every single weekend, I am talking about the brand new movie on Netflix or television show, whatever it is. I am so glad that you guys are here, and I'm so glad that you guys are taking part in my channel. This weekend, so many more videos to come. We have more Netflix reviews, possibly a Young Justice review. We're going to talk about so many things, but I love it because I love movies. You guys are the absolute best, and I'll catch you very soon.